right, so today I thought I would do something completely different. Love and Torah, part 41. Just to go crazy and be different, okay? All right, so Love and Torah, part 41. And I think we're getting close to where I just may close this up. I mean, I got a whole lot more I could do, but I think we've kind of made the points I want to make. There's a few more things I want to say, and then I've got some ideas of where we're going to go after this. All right, so let's continue in Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. Because I have a few more things to do in Romans and then maybe in Corinthians, and we'll see. All right? Although looking at the amount of material I have, we could certainly do this for another 6 months. Anyway, Romans chapter 12. Now remember, I know I say this every week, but I just want to make sure we're clear. We're here to understand, which is the name of the teaching, right? The relationship between love and commandment keeping. Love and the commandments. Now we know that the framework for all of this is the two great commands, the command to love our Elohim and the command to love each other. Those are your two great framework commands. And in the last 10 or 15 parts that we've been doing, we've been focusing on the loving each other part. And all the internal changes and growth and things that we need inside in order to be able to do all that. And that's really what's the hard part, is that the things are mechanically and intellectually not that complicated. They're just hard to actually functionally perform because of internal struggles. And hopefully we're understanding that. Because I know sometimes people are like, well, I don't know why he's talking about all this stuff. Well, that's because you're not really listening. If you were listening, you'd understand why. Because you know that this is the hard part. This is why you struggle to love each other. This is why you struggle to love him. I think even more so why you struggle to love each other, though. Because we tend to be less likely to take offense from him because there's at least a part of you that recognizes who he is. But you don't understand how to treat each other. And you're much more sensitive to the way one of us would treat you than the way he would treat you. Because after all, he's Elohim, right? So in Romans chapter 12, and we read the first 9 verses there the other day, and we're going to begin in verse 10, okay? In verse 10. But let's just kind of wrap the section up to this point with a couple of things. Just remember that the first verse is talking about presenting yourselves as a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, which is your reasonable worship. Notice that he says, what you do is worship, okay? Let's go back, and if you need to, listen to the teaching, what is worship? I haven't mentioned that one in a long time, okay? The definition of worship is not making sounds with instruments and singing. Although most places you go, they say we're going to have worship now, and there's going to be music and singing. Now, there's an element that makes that worship only because he commands us to sing and dance and make joyful noises to him. But worship is the sacrificing of yourself and being obedient to him, okay? So like when Abraham said to the entourage that went with him and Isaac to the mountain, and he left them to go with Isaac the rest of the way to do the offering, he said, my son and I are going up to worship. He wasn't going to sing and dance and make music, all right? So it says here, notice the connection in verse 1, I call upon you therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, your reasonable worship. So what he's simply saying is, when you do what's pleasing in the sight of Yahweh, that is reasonable and that is worship, okay? So when you keep Shabbat, that is reasonable and that is worship. When you don't eat things you shouldn't eat, that's reasonable and that is worship. Okay, so let's try to work on our vocabulary to understand that the more appropriate term for what happens in the front here with the music while we're trying to get our vertical focus the way it needs to be and we're singing and praising him, it's praise. It's the praise team leading us in praise time. Okay, not the worship team leading us in worship time. All right? And so the framework before we get to verse 10 is, it is reasonable for us to sacrifice ourselves to do what's pleasing in his sight. And that, in other words, if you agree with him, that's not a sacrifice. But the things that you would rather do that he says no, or you don't want to do but he says to do it, the sacrificing of you and your preference, your will, your desire to do his is a reasonable act of worship. Okay? That's framework number one. And he says this in verse 2, not to do this in a way that's conformed to the world, okay, but you're going to transform the renewing of your mind. So you need a different mindset to do this, okay? And then we're told in verse 3 that we have to do this in a humble way, not thinking more highly of ourselves than we ought to. And then we're told in verses 4 and 5 and 6 that, and actually into 7 and 8 even, we're told that there are many different gifts that people have. And we're not just talking about like what we think of as the spiritual gifts. We're talking about things like encouragement even, okay? So there's lots of gifts that you may have. You may have the gift of patience. You may be a great listener. You may be, great at plumbing or accounting or anything. You may have wonderful life coaching abilities. Whatever it is that you have, it's a gift. And not everybody has the same gifts, is what he talks about here. And then we get to verse 9, he says that these are all ways to express love is when we're walking in our gifts and appreciating each other's gifts. But let's not do this in hypocrisy. Okay, so what we finished off last time was with let love be without hypocrisy. Shrink from what is wicked, cling to what is good. And remember the definitions of wicked and good. Okay, good is all things being used and functioning and being what he intended them to be. Wicked is all things not being used, functioning, and being what he intended them to be. Simple. Not a complex definition. All right? When you are, and we've seen people try to do this, taking something that's not meant to be a screwdriver and use it for a screwdriver, it doesn't always go well, for example. Okay? Something might break or something might get hurt. See, that's the kind of thing when you take the butter knife and think it's a screwdriver. Now, you could get away with it, and that's the other thing about wicked things. You can do them, and it works. That doesn't make it right. Because it's not the way it was intended to be done. Okay? And so we're looking for the fullness of his intent in all things. And part of what he's talking about here, actually the main focus in verse 1 is how he intended you, me, to be. He intended us to be reasonable in our worship by sacrificing us and being set apart to do things his way. And now we get to verse 10. Okay, so that's our framework leading up to 10. Remember, because context is everything. And I can't tell you how many times I'll turn a channel or onto YouTube. Really, I guess we could say turn a channel, but really I spend almost no time on a TV, but on YouTube or some other thing, looking at teachings and things, to see what people are doing. And in seeing what they're doing, it's amazing how many times they're quoting a verse completely out of context. And so before I even start today, I want to remind you the context, right? So we're going to start in verse 10, but all of this was said leading up to verse 10, okay? Not that verse 10 is the most profound verse. I'm just saying is we have to know before we start reading this rest of the section, what was the setup? What was the foundation of where he's going? So he says, in brotherly love, verse 10, tenderly loving towards one another, in appreciation, giving preference to each other. Okay, so in brotherly love, tenderly loving towards one another, in appreciation. I think that we can very much struggle in appreciating the other person. Because we'd rather be distracted by what we don't appreciate. But there's very few people you run into that you'll maintain any kind of relationship with that doesn't have anything to appreciate. Because if they don't, you're not going to spend time with them. You're going to end that relationship very quickly, and you're not going to interact with people that you don't appreciate anything. But I think we are challenged in recognizing all the things in every relationship we have that we should be appreciating. Because the other thing is much more emotionally so strong that it dominates. I was going to say emotionally dominant. It's a strong enough emotion that it dominates our thinking. Remember, the mind is made up of thoughts and emotions. And if the thought is stronger, the emotion has to behave in line with the thought. If the emotion is stronger, the thought gets subjugated to the emotion. Maybe you never thought of it that way before, okay? But I want you to think about that. When whichever one is stronger, is driving. Okay? If your thoughts are strong enough and powerful enough, it will drive no matter what the emotion is trying to get you to do. If the emotion is strong enough, your thoughts are almost irrelevant because the emotion is driving. All right? And so he's saying here, look, we need to be doing these things in appreciation. And it's hard to appreciate when there's so many things that you don't appreciate that the other person is doing, and that emotion becomes so strong you can't even think of all the things that you should appreciate that they're doing. That's hard. You know, you could be, just fill in the blank. People say, well, you could be living in squalor. You could be living in the dirt. You could not have a house. You could have, outdoor plumbing and not indoor plumbing, if you have plumbing at all. You could literally have no food in your house. I got people telling me how broke they are. They don't know what broke looks like. See, if you're American, broke means I can't get everything I want. Can we agree? That's our definition of broke. I can't get everything I want. No, broke is you can't get what you need. Okay? That's broke. Of course, I haven't talked about this a whole lot lately, but we used to teach a lot about the wants-needs disconnect, or needs-wants disconnect, where we think something's a need when it's only a want. And our wants become needs, and if it's a need, you have to have it. I need cable. I need internet. I need cell phones. You don't need any of that stuff. But you want it. But because you have the disconnect, you think you need it. And so the same thing comes then to appreciation. You may have a less than perfect marriage. You may have a less than perfect living situation. You may have a less than perfect job. But you know what? There are people out there that don't have a job or don't have a marriage or don't have a house or whatever it is that you're not appreciating. Because all you want to focus on is the fact that what you have isn't what you want. Instead of figuring out what you can appreciate. And then you make the even bigger mistake. You compare your situation to the piece of somebody else's situation that's what you want that you don't have. Even though they've got other things that you don't want, but you have. Okay? But you're only comparing that little piece to somebody else's piece. They've got the car you want. You have let's say you have a car that's broken down, doesn't work, and somebody else just got a new one. But you don't know what else they've got going on, where you might have it a whole lot better than they do. But you're just comparing your I don't like, I don't want, or this is not right, and I want to, oh, they have. But there's other stuff that they have that you don't want. It all comes together as a package, okay? I've told people about marriage when I've counseled the people for the premarital counseling. I said, the only way this is going to work is if you recognize that it only works if you both lose. And what I mean by that is, if you've got to win, that means the other one has to lose. And then it can't work because both of you are trying to win. But if you recognize that if you both are willing to lose here or lose there so the other person can have, and it says here to do this, it says giving preference to each other. What is preference? It means allowing them to have the choice or the preference over what you might want. Putting preference on them and not you. Now, he's saying, let this be done without hypocrisy. All the stuff that's coming is still coming out of let love be without hypocrisy. So how do we, in brotherly love, tenderly loving towards one another, in appreciation, giving preference to each other, how do we do that without hypocrisy? See, some of us struggle, and I mentioned this a little while back, but some of us really struggle with this idea of selfless versus selfish. And what I mean by that is you can look like you're preferring somebody else. But if you're doing it because it's what you want, the way you want, but you're doing it for them, at least you think you are. But I've said often, if you don't ask the question, is this what you want? And also give them the freedom to say no, because a lot of people will say yes because they don't want to start a fight or offend you. And so so you say, oh, I did ask them. And they said yes. But you have to give them the freedom to say no. You have to tell them it's okay if you don't want this. Because people are so sensitive, and they know that we're dealing with human beings that are so sensitive. They know that it's dangerous to say no. Because somebody may be offended. Because they're afraid if they say no to you, you may be offended. So they say yes. And they let you do stuff for them that they really didn't want, or do the thing that they did want but let you do it the way you wanted. So we got to be careful when it says preference to the other. That means find out their preference. Okay? Husbands, wives, parents with children, friends, etc. If you're really doing this, you must find out what they actually want. Okay, we've had that problem in this ministry consistently since the beginning. People would come in the ministry, tell me that they're totally bought into the vision that I have, but then they start doing it their way. And then I would say, you're not doing my vision. They would argue with you. Oh, yes, we are. I said, no, you're doing your version of my vision. And I don't want anybody to think they know who I'm talking about, because I'm talking about lots of different people over 20 years, okay? But you can have that same problem with a husband and a wife, with a parent and a child, with an employer and an employee, where you have to make sure that you're actually showing preference to the other by finding out what they actually prefer. Is this what you want? But you have to always make sure that you've conveyed they have the freedom to say anything. Well, really, that's not what I want. Because I've done that to some people, and they get all offended. Well, I don't like that at all. Really? No. Oh, but I got it for you. I don't know where you got it from, that's what I wanted, but you know. And so that's very challenging. You know, I try to live this out at least some of the time, so I'm not going to say I'm perfect at it, but I'll give you an example. Like, for example, I know that there's a tradition when you get married that the man buys the engagement ring or buys the wedding, buys the ring, you know, for the woman. There wasn't a prayer in wherever that I was going to do that for my wife. I was going to make sure she picked it out. Why would I think I would know what she's going to want to have on her finger the rest of her life? Right? No, I was the one buying it, but I wasn't going to go buy one and bring it to her. Because then she's going to sit there going, I don't know. Now, I may have got it right, you never know, but why would I want to risk that? Why not just do the more simple thing? I want to get you an engagement ring, and I want you to pick it out. I'll get you whatever you want, within this budget or whatever it is, right? Then she gets what she wants. And wives, you can do the same thing with your husbands, you know. You know, you want to get them an anniversary gift or some other type of gift. You may want to find out what they want. I've gotten a few that I didn't from people that have gotten me gifts, you know. And because they never made the effort to find out. Look, it's great to get a surprise. Hey, I want to surprise you with a gift. Well, it doesn't go over so well if it's something the person doesn't like, doesn't want, or some other thing. Because then they have to sit there smiling in a phony smile going, thank you. But you really can't, this verse that we're talking about here, you really can't do if you don't know your brother. If you don't know the person we're talking about. It says, in appreciation, giving preference to each other. How can you give preference if you don't know what their preferences are? You got to get to know each other. That's a loving thing, to get to know each other. And by the way, if you get to know each other, then you should also be much, much, much more prepared for any kind of lashon hara that may come around you about that person, because you know if it's true or not. When that person starts spreading some, false whatever, and you say, no, I know that person, that's not true. I'm sure that's not true, because you know them. But the question is, do you think you know them, or do you actually know them? You have to make an effort to actually get to know somebody. And not everybody, well, I'll rephrase that. Just about most everybody is not free about just sharing who they really are to you when you first get to know them. It takes a while. We have a lot of barriers that we put before we show who we really are to most people. I think most people who are challenged by me the person, right, not me the teacher, is because I don't have much of that. I'm me most of the time, warts and everything. And they're not used to that. They're used to people who put up a much more public, protected persona or something. And so I apologize to people that get offended and upset when they see me do something in public. That's just me being the flawed human being that I am. But I'm not good at hiding it. I'm not saying that makes it right. I'm just not good at doing it. And so I'm very real. And if I'm not happy, you know I'm not happy. If I'm happy, you know I'm happy. If I'm having a problem, everybody around knows I'm having a problem. I didn't say that's good, by the way. I'm just saying, but if you're not used to that because you're very private and you would never do something in a way that anybody would ever know that you were really going through all of that. I'm not saying that's better or worse. I'm just saying is some of you have a real problem with me because I don't do all of that. And it's not by choice. It's just I happen to be that's my personality. I just don't, I'm not good at that. And I'd like to be better at some of it because I really would embarrass myself a whole lot less. But some of you get very uncomfortable when you're dealing with people that are real. Because real isn't always fun, isn't always pretty, isn't always, gentle or whatever it is. Real is real. Okay? And I think ultimately we all want to be able to be real with each other and really know each other. But if we don't give each other the freedom to be real, hey, it's okay to be you. Look, the one thing that I emphasize probably as the most important thing in the dating process, whatever that vetting process is, be real. Let them spend time with the real you. Oh, but you're going to be the real you after you say I do. And that's going to freak them out or freak you out when they're acting that way, and then you're in trouble. Because then I get this horrible thing that I never want to hear anybody say, well, if I'd have known. Well, why didn't you know? Because you guys weren't real when you should have been. So it was hidden. Be yourself. But nobody will want me if I'm myself. You're not going to want a person that wants to fake you. They're going to find the real you eventually anyway. So when you trick them into getting them, be real. And then be willing to let others help you with your realness. And that's hard. Okay, but be real. All right, so if we're going to be loving one another and not in hypocrisy, but we're going to do it without hypocrisy, and we're shrinking from what is wicked, clinging to what is good, doing this brotherly love tenderly and appreciation and giving preference. Verse 11 says, not idle in duty, ardent in spirit, serving the master. Okay, so this is talking about things within the body. It's also talking about things without the body. So here we're starting to talk about things inside the body. And he says, look, do not be idle in duty. And this is a problem we have when we start having to scold everybody for why they don't volunteer to do things, or when they do things, they're not really diligently doing them and those kind of things. I'm going to throw this out there because I think it's important. We had one of the members, and this won't embarrass him, I don't think, I won't mention his name, put a fairly long Marco Polo together because he was upset that I had to. Now, he wasn't upset with me, but that I had to address over the last couple of weeks, over and over again, some things that the body shouldn't need anymore. But the body's forcing me, because of their choices and their behaviors, to have to address a bunch of stuff. And he was dead on right. But it's sad that these things have to be addressed. And like when Paul says, look, I'd like to do other things, but you guys are still sucking your thumbs and acting like babies. And there shouldn't be divisions among you. There shouldn't be all this other stuff. And so, yes, you're right. And somebody said, oh, but some new people might come on, and the first thing they do is they hear you going like this to the congregation. You know what? The snowflakes are going to just get melted and go away. I'm being blunt. The ones who actually know what I was doing will be saying, that's a group I want to be a part of when the leader is not afraid to stand up and do this when it's necessary. All right? Because all I'm hearing is the blowback. Oh, if a new person first came, I've had other people tell me the first thing they heard me do was something like that, and they said, good. I might want to hear what this guy has to say. Because he's not afraid to get in there and say what it is, and if somebody needs to get a little smacking, then he's willing to say it. you're going to get both reactions. Okay? I know this is going to be hard for some of you, not all of you. Some of you have been listening to me long enough, this will be easy. We are not of a mind, of a belief, that somehow everybody in their condition right now is ready for this. Okay? This is the position, though, of groups around that are Messianic or Hebrew, that somehow it's a kumbaya, everybody come and it's all great and we're all ready and we'll just make allowances for everybody and we'll make it palatable to everybody and everything's okay and can go and everything can be fine. Yahweh doesn't say any of that. He says, this is what it is, you're going to go do it, and those who want to be a part of that will attach themselves to you when they're ready to do so. But this is not, that sort of coddling, enabling, entitling thing. He says, this is it, or you can be outside the camp. There's not like, this is it, and we'll make adjustments for you in the camp. This is what goes on in the camp. If that works for you, fine. If it doesn't, there's outside the camp. You got two choices. His desire is for everyone to be in the camp, and that's why it's 1,000-year millennial reign to give people a chance to grow out of that snowflake, coddled, soft, weak, heartless place. I mean, heartless, not that they don't love, but they have no heart to put in that effort. Okay, like I'm using like the sports metaphor, like a team that has no heart, just has quit. It's basically they quit. They're quitters, all right? And it may take 1,000 years to get people there because there's a lot of years, several thousand years, of generationally and genetically embedded quit and weakness. And we see it getting worse and worse and worse and worse. I heard an interesting statistic the other day. I don't know if it's true. I just thought it was interesting, that I guess they had done some measurements on the pounds of pressure of a handshake. The average handshake, how much squeeze pressure there was a generation or two ago compared to now. That number's dropped significantly for the men, and it's gone up for the women. Did I tell you anything? The men are getting weak. Women are getting strong. And I'm not saying it's bad necessarily if the women get strong, but the weak men is causing a problem. Physically, mentally, emotionally. And so, you will not want your teacher to worry about what he has to say at a microphone based on who might just happen to tune in that day. Because you have to understand, he's in charge of who does what and shows up when, and his timing is the timing. And you know what? Some of you found me, and I'm not going to ask for raised hands, found me, and the first time you found me, you weren't ready, and you went away, didn't hear me again for a year or two. Just because you weren't ready for that message. I hear that all the time. Hey, the first time I heard you, I was like, nope, didn't hear you again for about 2 years, or whatever it was. Because people might say, oh, but you got to be careful. You talk about that, and a new person will walk in, and it may be exactly what they needed to hear. I would not think that beware false prophets would be the best first teaching to hear. I'm just saying, if you asked a logical question, I would say that would be too strong for almost anybody. But how many of you, that was the first teaching you heard? Half the room, okay? But I would never have thought to recommend that to you first. But yet, I can't tell you that everywhere I go, when people talk, it's at least half of them, it's the first teaching they ever heard. So let's not think that we're so smart to know what's appropriate for somebody else and what they need to hear. Because almost every one of you will tell me whatever teaching you heard first was what you needed to hear. It wasn't necessarily what the next person, what they needed to hear, it was what you needed to hear. And you said, that's exactly what I needed to hear. This guy's reading my mail. Okay? And so let's not worry about what comes from the microphone and how other people might react. Look, this is about a process. And in this process, we're learning about loving each other, but we're also loving each other in a structure. And we have to accept that structure. Because some of you are like, we're done with this love and Torah, 40 parts. Come on, move on to something else. Well, are you done fixing the things that I'm talking about? Have you gotten them all fixed and worked out? I don't think so. It doesn't appear, I'm not going to have ego flowing out of every pore of my just assuming. It certainly doesn't look like you've got it all figured out. I don't see the evidence of it. I know I don't have it all worked out as far as how to love you, the way he loves me, or the way he loves you. I think we might spend until the day we die working on that one. All right? That's a hard one. That's not like trying to figure out how to move from Sunday to Saturday or how to just figure out to read ingredients on a label so you don't eat pork. I mean, this is a lot tougher than that. Okay? Preferring somebody over yourself, not idle in duty, but ardent in spirit. What does ardent in spirit mean? It's not, don't go to the charismatic, Pentecostal, whatever. Ardent in spirit. It means that you have an ardent, a fervor, a passion for what the fullness of his intent is. Spirit, above, heavenly. You're ardent in the above, in the heavenlies, in the things that came from there to you to help you become what they are. You need to be ardent or passionate about that. We're not talking about some emotional, feeling-based spirit thing or whatever it is, okay? You're going to get excited, have passion and ardor for things of above. He says, and in doing so, you're doing all of this in serving the master. Now, what does it mean to serve the master? It doesn't mean that you have a job like mine necessarily. It means that you are doing whatever he's gifted you to do, and you're doing it in service to him. He gave you these gifts to do. And you're serving him when you do the things he says, like to love one another. So even though it might not be directly connected to him, if your gift is a gift of encouragement, which is one of the verses it talks about in verse 8, he who encourages in encouragement. So you may have the gift of encouragement. So if you see somebody needs encouragement, you give it to them, you're serving the master. He gave you the gift to use to help somebody and encourage them. And so it doesn't mean that it has to be in some sort of direct ministerial part or function. He gave you something that you're to do to members of the body. And so when you do that, you're serving him, because he gave you that gift to do that. Verse 12. And while you're doing all of this, you're going to be doing it in rejoicing in the expectancy, enduring under pressure, continuing steadfastly in prayer, imparting to the needs of the set-apart ones, pursuing kindness towards strangers. Okay, so he's now giving us the balance of the perspective here. So he says, while you're doing all of this, you're preferring others, you're not idle in your duty, you're ardent in spirit, you're serving the master, you're rejoicing. This is tough for a lot of you. In expectancy. See, we talk a lot about in our mindset, right? The heart and the thoughts. The mind is the brain and the heart combined. And we talk a lot about how when you have too much focus on what's already happened, how that, if you're in the present moment, but you're still focused so much on what the past has been going on, how that leads to things like depression, or how it shackles your ability to move forward because you believe the past equals the future. And so you're all bound down. And then we talk about those who have a fear-based expectancy, how that creates levels of anxiety. All of that insecurity, all of that fear of what may happen, or what you would expect to happen that's negative. And he's telling you, no, rejoice in your present because of what you know and you're expecting to come. That's the wonderful, the above. So focus on that expectancy. We have expectancy that we're going to fail, we're going to end up in divorce, our children are all going to be miserable, everybody's going to be broke. I mean, we have these horrible expectancies. I'm going to have horrible health, whatever. Instead of the expectancy that he gives us, the hope of the kingdom, of the resurrection, our resurrection, not his. His has already happened. The hope of eternal life. The hope of wiping away every tear. The hope of the incorruptible body instead of this horribly flawed, broken down one that we have now. See, that's what he's talking about. So you got to rejoice in your expectancy. A lot of you are not rejoicing because your expectancy is awful. You're expecting only awful things. And you're sitting there waiting for that other shoe to drop because you're expecting it. Well, we should be expecting the other shoe to drop. Yeshua was the first shoe. He's resurrected, and he's sitting at the right hand. We are the other shoe. Change your expectancy and rejoice. And he says, look, while your expectancy is going to cause rejoicing, there's going to be life happening at the same time. So the next part of the verse says, endure under pressure. Because there is a lot of pressure to totally refocus your expectancy onto the wrong things. There's a lot of pressure to quit. There's a lot of pressure to do things you shouldn't do. There's a lot of pressure to give into the influences, the negative influences, especially of other people. And so he says, endure. We have that teaching, endure and receive the crown of life. Endure under pressure. And if you can have the right expectancy, look at the order of this. If I didn't have the right expectancy, how would I possibly endure the pressure? And then, in order for the expectancy to actually come about while I'm going through pressure, the next part says, and I need to be steadfast. Okay? Steadfast in prayer. Now, I don't think that we have the right definition of prayer. I think you need to go listen to Master teach us to pray. Steadfast in prayer is not a Christianity's prayer warrior stuff. Oh, my goodness. And there are people that have wanted to know when we're going to add that to our ministry and who our prayer warriors are. And I watch other ministries out there, and they're all excited about their prayer warriors and the ladies that are interveners, and they've got this great, tremendous gift of intervention and everything. That's not scriptural. Not that way. Okay? Steadfast in prayer. What is prayer essentially? What's a good definition for prayer? How about a vertical awareness communication? Okay? So steadfastly thinking about the above and what the above is thinking about you. That's how you can continue and endure. With an awareness, like he says, pray always. So you walk around all the time going, okay, Father, and just talk to yourself all day long in prayer? Pray always? No. Be vertically minded always. Vertically aware and in a level of communication, because communication doesn't have to be with words. If I walk in the room and you're my child, okay, or one of you guys, and I walk in the room, you're now aware that I'm in the room, and you may not be aware of what you're doing because I may see what you're doing. And there's an awareness communication without words. Right? Okay? Or if you're married and your spouse walks in the room, or if you're a child and your parent walks in the room, or whatever it is, all of a sudden there's an awareness that affects your thinking and your behavior. At least potentially, because you're first going to at least edit quickly and go, okay, am I doing anything I shouldn't be doing? And if the answer is no, then you're fine. You go on with what you're doing. But if the answer is yes, then you adjust very quickly. Well, if you had this praying always thing going on without words, aware that he's watching, aware that he's there, not just for watching and kind of going like this and looking over you like, what are you doing? But also he's there when you need him to lean on, to help you, to carry you, etc. You can be steadfast in that, you can endure, and you can have your expectancy. Hopefully you all followed that, okay? He says, rejoice in the expectancy. Why? Because there's some great things that are coming. If you endure and you pray, your prayer life is steadfast, you're vertically aware. He says, yeah, you can rejoice, but you're going to have to be without hypocrisy. You're going to have to not be idle, going about your duty. What duty? The duty that says that it's your reasonable worship to sacrifice yourself and do what's pleasing in his sight. That's your duty. Don't be idle about that. Okay? He says, imparting to the needs of the set-apart ones, pursuing kindness towards strangers. So it's in this place. Let's not skip the steps. It's like the recipe to the cake, okay? You don't start imparting to the needs of set-apart ones when you haven't done the other things, and you're not qualified, and you're not ready to be imparting anything to anybody. Because, there's so many of you that want to impart all kinds of stuff. And you want to set everybody straight, and you want to have your own little ministries, and you want to post all these things, and you're just not qualified for that. I'm not trying to offend you or insult you. But I mean, I can't tell you how often I see somebody post, and it's not always somebody in our group, just see a post somewhere that someone brings to my attention, and I'm thinking, what are they thinking? Why would you post that, as wrong as it is? And claim you're representing the above and that you know what you're talking about. But they do, and it's foolishness, all right? And I don't usually jump in and correct it. If it's posted in our group, I just delete it and just make it simpler, okay? All right. So he says, imparting to the needs of the set-apart ones, pursuing kindness toward strangers. So, set-apart ones, we try to impart needs, all right? Because some of you want to have the ministry come and help you with all your wants. We're here to help you with your needs, okay? Just keep that in mind and understand that. And by the way, I guess we'll talk about it here. We've talked about it in other places, but just so it's in multiple, the more places I can put this, the better. You have to understand the proper role between you and the ministry when you have a need. First of all, you should, for your personal development, not for the ministry not having to deal with you, but for your growth and your development, you should have done everything you know what to do or how to do to fix your problem before you come to the ministry. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't come for maybe advice about that first, but once you realize you couldn't get it done, you should have already tried everything. We are so enabled and entitled. This is like because the government jumps in and helps you with everything, and friends and family help you with everything, that we quit way too early on the journey of trying to fix it ourselves. You know, my son's such a great example when he was little because we would buy these Lego kits. Okay? And within a few minutes of putting it together, it had the picture instructions. He was great at following the directions and stuff. But he would almost always, in the first few minutes, go, "Dad, I need some help." And invariably, I was busy and didn't help him. But a few minutes later, when I went over to him, he'd already finished it, built it, and figured it out. The lesson being, he gave up too quickly, but then he didn't. Okay? He just figured, okay, and he figured it out. And I think you guys want help way too quickly. You know, I almost feel like my counseling for the first time you contact me about something is, figure it out. And if you can't, then come back. But I feel like really that I'm not saying that enough. You guys want me to fix it, give you the formula, give you the life hack, give you the thing that's going to help you with whatever it is in your life coaching that you need, whatever, instead of telling you, go figure it out. The incredible growth you get when you do that, that's being derailed by somebody figuring it out for you, is tremendous. There's a tremendous amount of growth you are missing out on when somebody else does it for you. And some of you have children that can't function because you're doing everything for them. And you coddle them and you enable them. Instead of saying, go figure it out. And by the way, go figure it out doesn't mean you on your own powers. It means go find resources that you yourself can read, watch, or some other, get the information that you need to go ahead and figure it out. Now, if you come to me, that's fine. I may guide you to resources so that you can figure it out. Otherwise, how are you ever going to grow? Okay, you have to put more effort into figuring it out. But it talks about imparting to the needs. So now, once you get to the point where you have a need and it's not getting met and you don't know what to do and you've struggled and you've gotten some counsel, then you got to be willing to recognize that you have a problem and that you are a part of the problem. I didn't say you were the problem. You might be, but I didn't say you were. You're at the very minimum a part of the problem. Okay? And so you need to be willing to bear yourself to the ministry in terms of the situation so that we can figure out what is actually a problem. I can't pay my rent. Well, that's not the problem. That's a symptom of the problem. You're going to come to us. Don't come to us unless you want to dig down and figure out the problem. And you will not like it. It will not be fun, but it'll be worth it. I'll say it again. Yeah, clap. You will not like it. You'll sit in the crying corner. You will. And hear somebody get in your face about how you let yourself end up where you are, so that you own how miserably that's your fault and you need to fix it so you don't embarrass yourself again. And yes, you should be embarrassed. Not embarrassed like mortified, but recognize that it's yours. And because you let it get that bad without doing anything about it, there's shame to that and embarrassment to that, which is supposed to motivate you to never do it again. No, what you'll do is you'll never come to me again because you're going to say that was the embarrassment. No, the embarrassment was that you let your life get to where it is. And when I say that, it's not because it's embarrassing to make mistakes. It's embarrassing that you haven't done anything to fix them. And some of you really have done nothing to fix them. You know, I had a lady, no longer attends here, but a lady came to me, and I knew she had had a trauma when she was a child, and she'd had therapy and other things, but none of it took. And at some point, in dealing with this very hard to deal with person, I said, your problem is you've really never dealt with this thing that happened to you 58 years ago. And she says, and she got all offended. I've been in therapy, and I've done this, and I've done that. And I was like, and you're no different now than 58 years ago. So what have you really done? You sat down, paid money, and listened to somebody yak at you. But you've not done anything. That's going through motions. It's almost like saying, well, I paid my membership for the gym, so why am I not losing weight yet? I mean, I joined the gym. I watch fitness videos. I read about it. No, but if you don't do anything, he says, don't be idle in your duty. You have to do something with what he's giving you, all this stuff, the scriptures, the teachings about what to do to become him. But if you don't apply it and do it, then you have to have the shame of that. Shame on you for not doing what you know to do. And it's not a permanent shame. It's a motivational shame that says, I'm not putting myself back in this position. I'm not going to have anybody look at me like, what is wrong with you that's sitting around and doing nothing for all this time? And I've had to do that with a few people. When did you lose your job? 8 months ago. What have you been doing for the last 8 months? Nothing. What's wrong with you? Because some of you are waiting for the perfect this, that. You have bills to pay. You need to not be idle. Go get a job. Go get 3 jobs. Do something. The doors will start to open. But we get idle because we wallow in the self-pity and the woe is me and look what's happened to me and this is all unfair and this is all, when really you've done nothing to get yourself over the last 30, 40 years to get you in a position better than where you're at. And now you don't understand why you can't make more than $15 an hour or $12 an hour because you never did anything to develop the skills to make more than that. And you have never learned to have discipline. Actually, I'll stop right there. You've never learned how to have discipline. You're not disciplined in your spending. You're not disciplined in your emotions. You're not disciplined in how you can say no to yourself. And so you say you're broke, but yet you still spend the money on what you want. Ministry, we have this conversation every day. Oh, we talk about so-and-so, blah, blah, came and wants money, blah. I said, but somehow they always manage to spend it on what they want. Billy's sitting there going, yeah. They always have money for what they want. And you see it on Facebook because they're not ashamed. Oh my gosh, it's amazing how unashamed they are. They come to us asking for help, and then we see them on vacation in hotels and swimming pools and Disney or wherever they're going. Had a lady one time, we lent, her husband got a new job. He wasn't going to get paid for like a month, an over-the-road driver. And by the time the cycles worked around and got paid, it was going to be, so we helped her with her rent. Because he was finally going to get the job that was going to pay enough to really get them out of their hole. So we helped them with like 2 months' rent to get them a little head start. I went to visit their house. They invited her over for Erev Shabbat. And this was right after Black Friday and Thanksgiving. And they wanted to show a little video for us on their new big screen TV. I was like, oh, that looks new. Oh, yeah, I couldn't resist. It was an amazing deal on Black Friday. whoa. You still owe me money. Me, the ministry. How do you go and buy a big screen, flat, whatever TV when you owe the ministry money? Because you needed rent money. This is where you want to take somebody and just pull out their lower lip, and that's Billy's line. Billy's always wanted to smack everybody's lower lip. Hey, it's an improvement. He used to want to give you a punch to the throat, so he's gotten better. Now he just wants to smack your lower lip. You laugh, but this is not unusual behavior. This is how weak we have gotten. We don't understand what needs are. Because it says here, this is the reason I'm talking about this. It says, imparting to the needs of the set-apart ones. And then he says, when it comes to strangers, pursue kindness towards them. We're not obligated to meet the needs of the strangers, but we should be kind to them. And it doesn't say just be kind, it says pursue it. Because they may not be the kind of people where their mindset is that moment where they're ready to receive anything from you kind-wise. They're going to be nasty and obnoxious, and you just may have to keep your distance. But you want to pursue kindness towards them, okay? You want to pursue kindness towards them. What verse did I want to go to? Okay, we still got more. He says, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. That eliminates almost all of you posting on Facebook. Yeah. Because you want to shame them and embarrass them and curse them and get everybody on your side to know, oh, but I didn't mention their names. Everybody knows who you're talking about, who knows you. Not everybody knows, but the ones who know who you're talking about. Especially when you're talking about me in the ministry. They know. And you think you're so clever. Oh my gosh, the ego that's there. You think you're so clever that we didn't know. And then they'll act like, oh, I wasn't talking about you. Really? Everybody knows who you were talking about. And so you can't be doing that. It says, bless those who persecute you. He says, bless and do not curse. What does that mean, bless and do not curse? What does it mean, bless those who persecute you? So am I going to sit and go ahead and say a blessing over somebody who's persecuting me? What does it mean? He said, what does cursing mean? Putting a voodoo hex on you? Swinging a dead chicken? What does it mean? He's saying, be a blessing if the opportunity arises to those who persecute you. He says, be a blessing and not a curse to them. Don't be a curse. Don't cause problems in their lives. Don't try to cause stumbling. Don't rally everybody against them. Be a blessing. This is not about your words like placing a curse or placing a blessing on them. Does that make sense? Are we getting that? All right? Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. What does that mean? Be empathetic. Have some empathy and sympathy for what people are going through, okay? Be of the same mind towards one another. Do not be proud in mind, but go along with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Be of the same mind toward one another. What mind? He said in verse 2, the renewing of your mind. Philippians tells us that we are to let the mind of Messiah be in us. Philippians 2:5. And so he says you need to be of the same mind towards one another, which he said what? Love each other as I have loved you. Be of that same mind. Don't be proud in mind. Okay, so what does proud in mind mean? How do you end up with pride in your mind? You're thinking, and your emotions are behind it, that I'm doing this more than you, better than you, superior to you. In other words, you're judging the other person and finding yourself superior in whatever it is you're doing with them. It says, be of the same mind. But he says, oh, no. Don't be all proud, but go along with the lowly. Maybe they're not able to do it on the level you're doing it. but you're looking down at them. You're judging them. There's a pride problem there. You're not them. Where did you get to be the one with the measuring stick to judge how high or how low they've fallen short or how much they've accomplished? You don't have their journey. You don't have their life. You got a big old plank you could be dealing with while you're looking at their twig. And actually, they've got a plank too, but it's just a perspective thing, right? But you see their plank, and that's what you're concerned with. And you're comparing an area where you happen to maybe be better than them at it. But what about the areas where they're better than you? Or maybe not them, somebody else is better than you. Maybe even this same area, I'm looking at you thinking, I'm better than you, but there's somebody else better than me. I'm not even just talking about like Yeshua. I mean, there could be another person that, whatever this area is, that they're better at it than I am. He says, don't have that kind of pride. Don't be proud in your mind. Look at how good I'm doing. And this comes across in arguments and debates and when people have conflict saying, oh, well, I've done this. I've forgiven you, and I've done this for you, and I've prayed for you, and Stop that. You're not impressing anybody. You're certainly not helping your argument because the other person is not wanting to hear all that. Because what you're saying is, I've done all these things that you haven't done, or I've done them better than you. It's not just saying I've done all these things. It's implied, and you should have done those things, and I did them better than you. Now there's a judging thing and a pride thing and a higher, I'm self-righteously above you. It's a elevating yourself. Let's not be doing that. Don't be elevating yourself. Humble yourself. Don't elevate yourself. He says, do not be wise in your own estimation. I think I covered that already, but we'll cover it again real quickly here. Just like the ones who want to correct me or correct you or correct everybody else because they're so smart in their own estimation. I would never get anything done if I had this pressure to correct everything I see that I think is wrong. Do you understand that? I could never accomplish anything if everything I thought needed correcting required me to involve myself. It would be never ending. Every one of you's conversations, every one of you on Facebook, every one of you in our group chat, everybody on the chat right now, I would be doing nothing but correcting. If I thought it was my job to go in there and correct everybody. Thinking so highly of myself. And actually, some of it is my job, and still I could never get it all done. I just don't understand why you think that it's your job and it's so important for you to do all these things, because you're thinking more highly of yourself, that you think it's above well, let's first say that you think it is your pay grade when it's not. You need to know what you're authorized to do. It's like giving legal advice, but you're not an attorney. Giving medical advice, but you're not a doctor. You gotta be careful. You get yourself sued and end up in court and all kinds of problems. Well, the same thing with all this. There's a higher court. That higher court's going to be wondering why you thought, instead of working on yourself, it was so important to correct everybody else. Straighten everybody else out. I got people wanting to, say they're going to sue us because I'm like saying Lord or something instead of Yahweh or something like that. Like as if that's like, listen, I'm your teacher. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't use the word Lord all that much. Nothing wrong with it. I don't use the word God all that much. Nothing wrong with it. Now, I'm your teacher. You don't have to agree with me. But you have to respect, if I'm your teacher, that that's the decision coming from your teacher. And I can explain it more, and I'm not going to do that now. There's not the time for it. But what happens is, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. And some of you, when you came out of the church mindset, well, I shouldn't say that. You came out of the church physically. The church mindset takes a lot longer to come out of. And you come physically out of the church, you learned a little bit of truth, and you are a dangerous person. You are dangerous. And you want to get all in everybody's face, and you are so smart now. I'm going to play a little game with you real quick. We have just a few minutes. I'll play the game. And some of you have played this game lots of times with me. We'll play the Have You Ever Been Wrong game. Okay? So, this is audience participation. Okay, you'll raise your hand. It's very simple. All right, we don't need the camera on you necessarily, but we're just going to do a little thing. And you're at home, you can play along. How many of you don't like to raise your hands? Okay, I caught you. All right. I just do that every time just to see how many I can catch. Okay, because always 3 or 4 put their hand up. I'm like, but you don't like to raise your hand. Why'd you raise your hand? Okay, so now you have no excuse when I ask the questions to raise your hand, except that I just shamed you and you're embarrassed. Okay, so have you ever been wrong about anything? All right. Now, this thing that you were wrong about, was it ever something that, you were ready to bet the house, lay your life on it, and you were still wrong? Okay? Happens a lot between husbands and wives, siblings, all right? And you were just ready to, you just knew that you knew. And don't you blame the Mandela effect or something on it. You were just wrong, okay? Now, all right, so we have reality, right? This is my big thing now, right? To get you guys to live in reality. In reality, you have been wrong. And you were wrong about something, not just wrong that you weren't sure. No, something, you knew that you could bet everything on it. You were right and you were still wrong. Okay? Any chance you'll be ever wrong again. Okay? And it be something that you feel just as strongly about. Okay? Now, when you were wrong, I know this seems obvious, but I want to just say it so we have a deeper understanding. Can we all agree that you could not see at that time, you couldn't see it coming that you were going to be wrong, right? There's no way you could see that coming. So then, if we know this is real, and we know it's absolutely likely to happen again, and you had no idea in advance that it would be that thing, because you couldn't see it coming, why are we so strong and adamant in each other's faces about everything still? Well, because I'm right. Yeah, but you felt that way before and you're still wrong. This is truth, and it's part of what he's talking about here in Romans to get us to treat each other more appropriately with this thinking, don't be proud in your mind and don't be thinking so highly of yourself. Don't be so wise in your own estimation. Well, I don't think that's right. Well, the words I don't think already put you in some trouble. Well, I don't think that's what you should. I don't think that's the problem. It's because you're not thinking. You're not thinking about how you might be wrong, and you've been wrong before, and you need to maybe de-escalate that deal a whole lot. All right? This is really where the problem is. Last question for the game. All right? Any chance that when Yeshua shows up, he's going to put everything the way it needs to be, and there's going to be at least something where you go, what? No, that's not, at least something. Well, if that's the case, why are we so hard on each other? You walk out your own salvation with integrity. Don't worry about everybody else's walking it out. You worry too much about what everybody else is doing. We are so nosy, such busybodies, and then we wonder how the body is all discombobulated like it is. You can't get to where we need to be in that emotional, dysfunctional place. Being so nosy and busybody and inserting ourselves where we don't belong, et cetera, et cetera. And this happens every day, all the time in the body. And it comes from these things we're reading about here. It says rejoice in expectancy. You know what my expectancy is? He's going to work out whatever you need. My expectancy isn't I'm going to work out whatever you need. My expectancy is that he is working with you. Now, I also expect that if you come to me, that he will do that through me because you came to me. But it's still him doing it. But that's my expectancy. I also expect that if I'm needed to be involved, you'll ask me to get involved. I don't insert myself in the situation. Oh, you guys are like looking for it. You are looking for every opportunity to insert yourself into the deal and just jump into the fray. And then, this is the best part. It blows up in your face and you act surprised. And then you get all mad. Well, I was just trying to help. The amount of things that go badly from the thought process of I was just trying to help is incredible. And I would almost feel comfortable to say that more than half the time it wasn't helpful. I'm being very conservative there. Oh, but I was just trying to help. But you should be asking, okay, this is what I want you to do. And we're going to end with this. I only got like 2 or 3 minutes here. I want you to be very red in this one way, all right? I want you to always ask before you do, especially when you're inserting yourselves, I want you to be brutally honest with yourself about what the likely response or reaction would be if you do what you're intending to do. So that you don't act stupid and surprised when it blows up in your face. Because you should have known that's what was going to happen. If you know the other person and you know what, if I do this, it's like pushing the button, whatever. And then you act all surprised. And the husbands and wives do this all the time, and parents of the children. You walk over, push the button you know is there, and then act, I can't believe it blew up. It said detonator on it, and you pushed it. And you knew where exactly the button was and that kind of thing. So, because I've often talked to people who wanted to make a post or they want to respond to a post, and I always say, write it out and then read it to yourself and ask, if I was in the other person's shoes, well, first ask yourself, what am I hoping will happen? And most of you can't even answer that question because you're just trying to get your pound of flesh and you just want to get your angst out. You want them to hear how you feel about it. But that's not the result you're looking for, because that's just you. That's all about you. Get you out of the picture. The other person, what is the likely response and result you're going to get? And just be honest about it. Don't be filtering it through your delusional, emotional space. Be honest. Because every time I talk to people, they'll come to me and they'll take out their phones and go, well, let me show you the exchange I had with so-and-so. See, I said this, and then they said this, and I look at them and I said, okay, that's what they said first, and then you responded. Now, let's read your response. And I always ask the same question. What were you hoping or thinking would happen? What did you think they were going to do to that response? Well, you didn't think about it. So now read their response. Based on what you said, honestly, does that really surprise you? Well, I guess not. But we don't think before we act, before we respond. Now, the reason I said be red is because results is the main important thing to the red personality. Think about the result. Okay, think about that. And to all of you, by the way, who see me get very frustrated at times and everything else and think I'm acting all blue, you don't understand the colors. And you can judge me for that all you want. I only get frustrated if the result is going to be a problem. Okay? I only care about how you do what you do if it's going to give me a result that's problematic for me. Otherwise, I don't care. But it looks to you very blue because I'm upset about it. Reds get upset about a lot of things. Anything that impedes progress, slows things down, and is going to mess with the results. So I never thought to hint at all that a red would be any less emotional than a blue. It's just for different reasons. All right? But you're not thinking in your blue moments about the result. You're just thinking, that person, what they did was wrong, and somebody needs to tell them. Does it have to be you? And if it does, how are you going to say it? What result are you going to get based on the way you're saying it? Well, I'm going to feel better. Well, that's you. But then they're going to blow up in your face and you won't feel as good. Now what? Think about the results. You cannot do what he's talking about here if you're not thinking about how the other person is going to respond to what you do, what you say, what you text. You have to be thinking about that. And that means you have to put yourself in their shoes. You know them. And if you know them, first of all, if you don't know them, why are you even involved? I can't believe the amount of times people are upset about texting and messaging that happens on Facebook from people they don't even know. but they happen to post something, that person saw their post and said something, and now they're upset about some stranger they don't know at all or what they said. So why would you even care what they said? Do you know them? No. So why do you care what they think? I got people that are literally crying on the phone. This person said I was in sin and said this. Do you know them? No. Are they your teacher? No. Are they your rabbi? No. Why do you care what they think? I'm serious. I mean, I'll smack all of you and say, knock it off. Why do you care what people think who have no relationship with you? Because some of you think I'm cold and this and that because I don't care. I don't care what any of you think unless I have a relationship with you that's appropriate for that. Do you understand that? Because my daughters even said to me, does it bother you when all these people say these things about you? And I said, no. And the reason is because I don't have any relationship with them. No, I don't like when people attack me. That's fine. But it doesn't upset me the way it would upset you because I don't receive from those I don't have a relationship with. Why do you? Why would you take anything from anybody that doesn't have the relationship where that would make sense to receive? And really, I wouldn't receive anything from someone who I don't think and don't know loves me. Why would I want to receive anything from anybody that I don't know loves me? Because if they love me, I know where it's coming from. Does that make sense for all of you? Well, now reverse it. Why are you involving yourself in people's lives who you have no relationship with? Why do you need to post? Why do you need to respond? We had a post recently between two sisters, and somebody who was not related to any of this stuff jumped in, had no idea what they were involving themselves in, didn't even know they were sisters. And I'm like, why is this third person jumping in, involving themselves? See, there's so much you don't know, like that person didn't realize it was two sisters going at it. Okay? Well, I didn't know they were sisters. Well, then you shouldn't have involved yourself until you get more information about why these two people are having this conversation and whether or not you're meddling in something that's none of your business. Now, of course, I could pick on the sisters and say, well, why were you doing this in public? Enticing people to involve themselves in your nonsense. You don't need to be doing that. That stuff should be private. You know what? There almost should be like a screening qualification for people to be on Facebook and posting. Because most of you should never type anything ever again till you get your emotions under control. And I've told you, and you don't listen, never text from an emotional, negative place. When you're in a negative place emotionally, don't text, don't post. Ever. Now, that doesn't mean you may not have a strong opinion, but do it when you're calmed down and can reassess it. Never. There's a lot of people that wonder why I've not responded to some things that they've sent me. It's because I wanted to initially, and I waited till I calmed down and realized there was no need. Okay? Don't post, don't text, don't communicate when you're in that negative, horrible place. Because you will not be pleased with yourself when you go back and you'll regret what you did. Okay? Unless you dig in your heels and just defend everything you do just because you relentlessly can never admit that you were wrong. But if you can be honest, you'll realize and regret what you did. Everybody can raise their hand and probably say, yeah, I've done that before. Amen? Amen. Let's go before the Father. Father, we come before you. And Father, we just want to pause now at the end of this teaching to thank you for your word, for encouragements on how to grow in our internal so that we can behave in an appropriate way in loving to each other, in a loving manner towards each other. And that, Father, this is our reasonable worship because it's your design and intent, the good that you made man to do. And when you made man, you said it was good. But it's only good if we behave and function in the way you intended us to function. So, Father, help us to walk away from behavior that is wicked, our own behavior that manifests as wicked, and to then embrace behaving in a manner that is good, that is approved by you, and that is in line with how you intended us to be. This is a very hard thing we recognize to do, and we ask that you would be patient with us, that you would encourage us, that you would strengthen us, and that you would help us to become strong in our internal fortitude to figure it out, as opposed to strong in digging in our heels when we're just backing ourselves up and defending ourselves. But to be strong in our commitment to steadfastly seek out how we can transform from what we are into what you are. And let that mind, the mind of Yeshua, dwell and reign in us. And so, Father, we come before you now very humble, knowing there's a lot of work to do, but coming to you in the authority and in the name of your Son, our Savior, Messiah Yeshua. Amen. Amen. Amen.